to another video, and it's not Project Large, it's not training, but it is training related, and it is a Q&A, and I guess you probably could tell by the title. So today's video, I guess it's probably important to mention that the questions were asked on my Instagram, which you can go down and link down in the description down below, or you can just type it in onto your phone at @movementtom. Give me a follow, keep up to date if you want with what I'm going. But that's where I got the questions for today's Q&A. In the future, it would be awesome to get the questions off YouTube. So during this Q&A, if there's something you find interesting, if there's something you disagree with, if it raises more questions, or if you have questions that you feel were unanswered in this video, which was probably likely because there's so much to talk about in this whole movement, health and fitness space, then leave a comment down below. I always reply to comments. If you ask a question for another Q&A, I won't probably answer it in the comments. I'll answer it in the next Q&A video. I personally really enjoy Q&As. I find them really helpful. Good to ask like the finer details rather than looking at these overall videos that a lot of people make. I personally find them really useful, so I hope you also find them useful. And it helps you out. That's the main thing. So that's why Q&As are so good. So without further ado, let's hop straight into the first question. And that is by I'm Sammy. And he says, do you believe in overtraining? And how many days do you work out per week? So this question is interesting because I think they both work pretty closely together in my answer. So the short answer would be yes, I do believe in overtraining, and I train 7 days a week. So the amount of time you train and overtraining is not really that closely related, because as human beings, we're supposed to move on a daily basis. If we can't move, then we would die in the wild, really. Let's think about it. If you can't move, you can't catch food, you can't hunt, you can't gather. You need to be able to move to live, really. So I think there's often this interpretation that's put on training that so many days a week is overtraining. Well, in reality, it's not how many times you're training, it's at what intensity those training sessions are at. So if you're spending too much time at a really high intensity, if you're going 7 days a week, and every time you go, you're hitting the gym really, really hard, balls to the wall, 80% sort of your 1 rep max strength training every single session, it's probably going to be pretty stressful. However, if you're mixing that up like I do, with maybe 4 days a week of pretty intensive strength training, and then the other 3 days more focused around mobility, low intensity, some yoga, some restorative exercise, some walking, some general movement, stuff that's not going to be too intensive, but maybe actually will be to aid recovery and restorative, then no, you're not going to be overtraining. Even though you're training the same amount of days per week, the response is going to be completely different. So rather than thinking about how many times a week you train, that should reflect your goals. So if you want to be improving your strength and skills, you need to be training them quite a few times per week. But the key is not to go super intensive every single time. So yes, I believe in overtraining. It's definitely a thing, and if you are doing it for a long period of time, you probably will maladapt, which means that you won't adapt to the stress that you're putting on your body from training. So you're not going to get the benefits of all the hard work you're putting in, and you're probably just going to make yourself ill. And I've actually been there a couple of times. I've given myself flu and glandular fever from generally just like overtraining. So it definitely is a thing. And I think there's no perfect amount. You've kind of got to look at your lifestyle, you've got to look at how much stress you can take, how much you can recover from, and then go from there. But I don't think it comes down to how many days a week you're training. I think you should move every day, whether it's just walking with yoga or something chill, and then add in as many intensive days as you can cope with. So for me, as I said, that's about 4 or 5 intensive days I can quite happily recover from. If I had more time to sleep because I wasn't working, then I probably could deal with 1 or 2 extra. So that one's up to you. There is such a thing as overtraining. Be careful because you won't get the benefits of your training if you go that far. But at the same time, you don't want to be going too easy on yourself because you're never going to get the results that you want. So he also asked another question and he says, I didn't see any ab isolation training in your workout videos. Do you not do them? The answer would be, I don't really do isolated ab exercises. One, because I believe in integration. So if I'm going to train my core, it's probably going to be doing front levers or planches or straddle presses to handstand or L-sits. So all of those are training my core, but they're also part of a bigger movement. I don't really want to sit down and just do sit-ups because it's boring and I don't really like doing them. I don't think it's really the best thing to do either. So if I can, where possible, integrate in those sort of styles, so try and incorporate core into my movements, then I think, especially with bodyweight training, you don't really need to do isolated ab exercises. You should be able to incorporate a lot of these tough skill exercises which are going to require a lot of core strength anyway, and we'll train it regardless. So the answer is no, I don't really do ab exercises. I train them as part of more complex movements. Another question from OMS157, and he says, what are good straddle up progressions? So by straddle up, he means sitting on the floor in a straddle, using your hands to help you stand into a middle split position, and then going back down again. So the progressions I would use for this are probably pretty simple, and that is using an elevated surface. So whether it's a sofa, a chair, a box at the gym, or just a mat, you want to elevate your bum slightly above your legs. So the higher you start, the easier it's going to be, obviously, and the lower, i.e. sat on the floor, the harder it's going to be. Another way to change this is by not using your hands at all, and simply using the muscles in your legs to perform these exercises. So this is going to be not too bad when you're doing on like an elevated surface that's probably pretty high, but if you're going on the floor and trying not to use your hands, then you either need to be a master of middle splits or just pretty badass. So there's definitely some progressions there. I threw up some clips over me talking just to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Hopefully that helps. It was also in, I think, weeks 4 to 7 of the Project Planche series. I use that as my middle splits training technique as well. He asked another question which is kind of linked to another guy called Emil Tarvinen, and one was asked if I want to maintain flexible mobile legs, what's the ideal way to train, and Emil asked tips to get better mobility in hips. So these two are kind of interrelated. I personally don't recommend doing one leg session a week and absolutely killing it so you can't walk down the stairs or climb up the stairs when you leave the gym, because ultimately you're going to have some major DOMs for that's delayed onset muscle soreness, by the way. For the next few days afterwards, you're going to be aching, and I think the response it's going to send to your body is probably not an ideal one. I personally like higher frequency training with a little bit less volume. So I'm getting a good general level of exercise and training in my legs and upper body as well. But I'm not doing so much that I can't sit down without being in pain the next day. So as far as this goes with training, as I was talking about earlier with ab exercises, I like to integrate my mobility into my leg training. So that probably looks like doing some Cossack squats as part of my leg routine, maybe doing some Jefferson curls or straight leg deadlifts for the hamstring mobility, doing deep squats, doing locomotion training from the Edo portal sort of stuff. So I like to integrate into my training some mobility, and I like to do it on a regular basis so I'm not too sore, and I think that's probably the best way to remain flexible and functional. Because if you're training once a week and going really, really hard, basically the 3 days or so after that, then you're probably not going to be much good. You're not going to be able to stretch because it's going to be really painful. Foam rolling is going to be really painful. And you're probably going to build up some quite serious scar tissue from doing that sort of style of training on a regular basis for a long period of time. So personally, I would recommend going lighter more often with leg training in terms of volume, and then also incorporating some mobility into that. As a little add-on for the hip mobility recommendations, I would recommend doing some sort of yoga or stretching on a regular basis. I have got a full body stretching video, which I will link to down below. And then as well as incorporating some loaded stretching. So whether that's a loaded middle split routine or something like EMMET preaches with his head to toe practice, or horse squats, or those sort of exercises. Again, if you look at the end of my sort of Project Blanche videos, I've got a lot of my strength and mobility work put in there as well. So I hope that answers those questions there. To summarise, leg training often and less volume, incorporating some mobility like Cossack squats or locomotion stuff or straight leg deadlifts or EMMET loaded mobility, and then also pairing that with some foam rolling and some light stretching outside of the gym. Rob Garden asks tips on muscle ups. The muscle up, I think, really comes down to everyone. Well, most people can do a pull up and most people can do a straight bar dip or a ring dip. So the two elements together are relatively easy. It's the transition that's the hard part. So nailing that transition, I mean, you nail a muscle up. So one way to do that on the rings would be doing some sort of assisted ring muscle ups, where you put a band underneath your hips and kind of it makes it a little bit easier to get up into that position and round. Or on a bar, I would recommend doing eccentric. So you're going down and you're trying to lower yourself off the bar as slowly as possible and all the way down. So really focus on that transition, get that transition nailed. Use some appropriate progressions. I'll put some links in the description down below to do some example videos. And once you have that transition nailed, the rest should just sync itself up. Especially with the rings, it's all about the transition. You should be able to do rings like really statically, no explosiveness required. The bar muscle up, because you've got a bar to kind of negotiate in your way, you will need a bit more explosiveness. But again, if you nail that transition, you're going to have a problem. And the last question is by OJCO, and he asks, what are your thoughts on heavy duty resistance band? Thinking of getting some helping with planche training. If you watched, I think it is week number 6 of Project Blanche, I had like a band assisted week. The main reason for this was just like experimenting with different types of training, different exercises. But I have done a bit of band assisted planche training as well as front lever stuff, and it is really useful because it is a way of training above your mat. It's like doing the eccentric. You're getting your body used to working those harder progressions, especially for the front lever. When you wrap it around your feet and you put up into a front lever, that makes a real big difference, because you can hold a front lever relatively easy with an appropriate strength band, and it's kind of nice to get used to that movement without actually being strong enough to hold that movement. So from a skills perspective, really beneficial, and from a mobility perspective, using heavy duty resistance bands for traction and other styles of like the Kelly Starrett mobility stuff, for sort of pulling your hips out and holding stretches, they're also really beneficial as well. So yes, I really like heavy duty resistance bands. I don't use them a huge amount, but I do definitely use them. One arm chin ups as well would be another example. So there's loads of examples online. CrossFit are a big proponent of why they're cheap and why they're widespread now. So yeah, definitely. If you're looking to progress your skills, then throwing in some resistance band assisted training every now and again is a great way to find out what it's like to be a harder progression. But that is it for today, guys. I hope I answered the questions well enough. I kind of just rambled on whatever was off the top of my head, going with it. So if you enjoyed this episode, as I said, hit a thumbs up, leave us a comment down below. If you didn't agree with something I said, then let me know and we can start a conversation and see what your thoughts are. And if I left more questions unanswered than I answered, which is probably going to be the case, then leave a question for the next Q&A. If this gets a good positive response, I'll do it on a weekly basis. If not, probably every 2 weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Chat to me down in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Have a strong week. Peace.